what is this, episode 4?
Episode 4.
Yeah, gosh, season 2. Talking about George Gordon, aka Lord Byron, one of the older romantics here.
The one of the younger
Younger
romantic.
ones, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
came later than the other guys, but yeah,
hmm
younger than the original ones. Yeah.
And I think this guy is the quintessential romantic. I mean,
Okay.
this guy basically like embodies not only all the ideals of romanticism, but this guy actually put his money where his mouth was
Hmm.
and died in a war trying to
Oh
free
yeah.
Greece from the Ottoman Empire. He died from his wounds from the war. He died of a sickness
Yeah,
afterwards, but
sickness. Yeah, yeah. But he did go and yeah, he did put his money where his mouth is. Yeah, that is true. Really kind of the epitome of the Byronic hero was Lord Byron. But yeah, no, it is funny. He is kind of like the epitome of like the romantic as far as like, this sort of like in Child Harold, like, looking at beauty, in the natural world and describing it very eloquently, but then also like feelings, this like sense of woe and kind of like misery. It's like very much like it's kind of like a pop punk, I think, you know, maybe a little more artistic, but similar sentiment.
no, it's no, I get what you're saying. It's like whenever if you ever see like an example of the kind of this dark, brooding guy, yet
Yeah.
he also has sort of money and means. He
Mm-hmm.
may,
Mm-hmm.
sort of come from like a wealthy family or something
Yeah.
like that. Almost like as I'm reading about Lord Byron, I keep comparing him to not only seeing comparisons of people comparing him to this person, but it kind of makes sense to me. He's almost like a Bruce Wayne kind of
Mm. Hmm.
figure.
Interesting.
He's this person that's like he's wealthy, but he's also dark and brooding. He has this hurt from his youth. He has this like inner pain, and
Mhm. Mhm.
he doesn't allow this to stop him. He goes all over the world and like does these almost like these feats, like swimming the Hellespont,
Yep.
and fighting, not only fighting for the independence of Greece, but putting money up for different soldiers pay and equipment and things like that. Greece, where like a lot of the
Mhm.
romantics are looking back to the Greek
Right.
world.
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think that I did find it kind of fascinating how and he talks about it in Child Harold, going to this place where and also just a little aside is like not many people he became like an overnight celebrity and kind of overnight celebrity and because not many people at that time in the British Empire is like kind of a budding empire still, and people from Britain hadn't really traveled as much, not the everyday person was traveled, so like being able to read about these faraway places. And of course he goes to Greece where it's supposed to be like the, like beginning of Western civilization, and like this great empire, and you just see it's kind of crumbled, and has been, raided by, um, people who are, and people who sell antiques and stuff, merchants, and has been kind of conquered by the Muslim like kind of East like the like I don't remember the name of the caliphate, but at the time Greece was under was basically like occupied by a foreign by foreign powers. And so yeah, just kind of seeing that it's like this disillusionment with the grandeur of the past,
Right. And not only that, Greece hadn't had its independence in 400 years. So these romantics, they often are reaching back to not only the Middle Ages, not only and also the ancient world, but being involved with liberating Greece after it had been occupied for 400 years. There's almost something storied about that, almost
Something
something,
romantic.
yeah, romantic about it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
but the independence of Greece did not happen until after Byron's death.
mm,
So it's almost like he did not get to see the promised land, but just some of his actions, reverberate through history, and he's a national hero in Greece to this day. Which I actually knew about Lord Byron's poetry, but I did not knew it was a big deal, but I did
mhm,
not quite know about his military campaigns and the end of his
yeah.
life.
Yeah, I wasn't aware until getting these past 2 weeks that he was like a hero, or like kind of a national figure in Albania either,
Mm,
which is kind of north of Greece. But in his kind of travels, he's just kind of an interesting person, and lived a little bit of a rock star life and kind of a sexually promiscuous life. He's definitely someone who would not stand up to the I guess to I don't what would you call it, woke crowd, or he would have got
mm,
me too'd, probably, Lord Byron would have been me too'd for sure. But very at a time, I don't think, for me at least, I don't think of this time as like one of like sexual freedom. But
mm.
and it wasn't in Britain, but he had his escapades outside of the country.
And that lent to his legend.
Hmm.
Obviously, in England, he was actually, he wasn't officially exiled from England, but he underwent a self-imposed exile because of, like you said, some of his sexual proclivities got him in trouble, but they were also
Hmm.
scandalous enough to be the subject of gossip. So
Right.
when he leaves England and he's, engaging with all these ladies and these different women all around the
Hmm.
world, or all around Europe,
Yeah.
which, may as well have been the world
Right.
as far as the
Yeah.
English at the time were concerned, this
Hmm.
just lent to his legend.
Hmm.
He's
Right.
he's gallivanting around the Mediterranean, and back in England,
Hmm.
they're cultivating this legend of Lord
Hmm.
Byron.
Hmm. Right. Well, and not just ladies either, to be fair and to be honest. So, and that's something that I found super interesting about, because Albania was like a Muslim country, but the king, or the leader, ruler, whatever, he had like an affair with the guy, which is just kind of
Mm,
interesting, because you'd think that. I don't know. I think of like maybe like the Muslim world as being not a place where there wouldn't be homosexuality, but at this time there
mm.
was, there, and in Turkey's place where he had visited, and talk, and the boys in the bathhouses, he enjoyed. So just kind of it's a different world.
Yeah, the Ottoman Empire has
Hmm.
always been like a transition between like the Islamic, the real, like the Islamic Near East, and sort
Hmm.
of, the Greece and into the Italy and the Roman world. So I can't explain
Right.
that either, but that was
Right.
interesting. That was
Yeah. No, I
interesting to
find it
find out.
fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah.
just because you kind of have this, and I know it's not true, but you sort of have a linear view of history oftentimes, and sometimes you don't quite realize it until you're confronted with something, and stuff is much more kind of circular. Um,
So yeah, this
you know,
so like Lord Byron's one of these figures where people throughout history would be able to find something to take umbrage with, and
mhm,
something to sort of be sort of amazed by. You can't really put this guy in a box. Like he's born with a club foot. He has
right,
sort of like
yeah,
this deformed foot,
hmm,
yet he is doing all these sort of athletic things, like the
right,
swimming these long
hmm,
distances, these brave
hmm,
things, like
hmm,
he was a great horseback rider, and
hmm,
people would sort of admire his stamina and his athletic
yeah. I believe
prowess.
he was kind of tall too at the
Right.
time.
So yeah, it's all for the time, like sort of sort of a imposing figure. I think he wore like odd clothing for the time, maybe like something dealing with his pants were sort of strange, and his
Hmm.
cloak and
Hmm.
everything. So, and just sort of an amazing mind, the way that he people would sort of gather around him, other writers. We did Percy
Shelley.
Shelley.
Yep.
other writers would sort of gather around him, and some of these writing groups that he would be a part of, like they would, be responsible for pop culture tropes like Frankenstein, the vampire. He didn't write about Frankenstein, but Mary Shelley was sort of someone who was in his circles.
Yeah, he
One
was there that night that the story
and that
was
same night
birthed.
and that
Yeah.
same night, the birth of Frankenstein, someone else also wrote the first vampire story.
Hmm.
Um, it wasn't Bram Stoker's Dracula, but it was one of the compatriots of Lord Byron. So the vampire and Frankenstein sort of enter into the Western world through one dinner, with Lord Byron. And
Mm.
they actually, I believe they actually had a séance that night. So
Yeah, I
there,
think yeah, yeah.
so there's mysticism and
Hmm.
romance and
Hmm. Hmm.
intrigue and world traveling and
Right, yeah. He was mad, bad, and dangerous to know.
right.
That's how he was described by a lover.
So I mean, this is a guy who's almost like one of the first celebrities.
Hmm.
He's a
Yeah, absolutely.
celebrity. He's an aristocrat. So there's that. It seems like a lot of stories usually center aristocrats and people of people of nobility. So he's an
Hmm.
aristocrat. He's
Hmm.
comes from a wealthy
Educated.
family,
Hmm.
educated, but he's also an adventurer. This sort of robust individual, despite his disabilities and
Hmm.
he's and despite his disability, he's a romantic, a prolific lover,
Hmm.
prolific writer,
Hmm.
and talk of the town.
Right. Yep.
Even though his some of his escapades may be more sultry,
Hmm.
or may come off as a bit odd by today's standards.
Right.
This
Incest.
then
Right.
incest and
Which.
with close family members and sort of lusting after the wives of his cousins and things like
Hmm.
that. So
Yep. And then
this is
also kind of disappointed with everything at the same time.
right. Wealthy, famous, ladies' man,
Hmm.
globetrotter, yet disaffected, sighing. He's sort of like I said, like almost like a Bruce Wayne, like has this like sort of dark brooding side, and not just Bruce Wayne. He's lent, he's the namesake for the Byronic hero, as you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
Whenever you see like the dark brooding yet capable guy,
Hmm.
um, this is a recapitulation of the Lord Byron.
Yeah. Insatiable appetite, lust for life. Um, yeah. With so you wanna share your poem? Because first take, if this is your first time joining us, we don't just talk about the poets. We read a poem and talk about that too.
All right, well, I will get into my poem. The poem that I chose to do is The Destruction of Sennacherib. And this poem details a Bible story. It's sort of like one of the Exodus stories where overnight an angel of the Lord kills a large amount of people. But in the Exodus story and the story of the 10 plagues of Egypt, it is the Lord kills the firstborn son. In this instance, we have God killing an army that is poised to sack Judah, the kingdom of Judah. And the priest of the Israelites make intercessions on behalf of God, and God intervenes and destroys the Assyrians, and they are able to maintain their kingdom. This is mentioned in Kings and I think Samuel, but this is a very lyrical poem. It's sort of fun to read out loud, and listen close. There may be a more contemporary author who often writes in a similar style, and we'll go into that after I read it too. But without further ado, we will get into the destruction of Sennacherib. The destruction of Sennacherib. The Assyrian came down like the wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold. And the sheen of their spears was like stars on the sea when the blue wave rolls nightly on deep Galilee. Like the leaves of the forest when summer is green, that host with their banners at sunset were seen. Like the leaves of the forest when autumn hath blown, that host on the morrow lay withered and strown. For the angel of death spread his wings on the blast, and breathed in the face of the foe as he passed. And the eyes of the sleepers waxed deadly and chill, and their hearts but once heaved, and forever grew still. And there lay the steed with his nostrils all wide, but through it there rolled not the breath of his pride, and the foam of his gasping lay white on the turf, and cold as the spray of the rock beating surf. And there lay the rider, distorted and pale, with the dew on his brow and the rust on his mail. And the tents were all silent, the banners alone, the lances unlifted, the trumpet unblown. And the widows of Asher are loud in their wail, and the idols are broke in the temple of Baal. And the might of the Gentile, unsmote by the sword, hath melted like snow in the glance of the Lord. So that riveting poem is The Destruction of Sennacherib. What do you think? Any thoughts on that, Justin?
Um, yeah, I mean, initial thoughts. Yeah, I mean, it is a Bible story. You know, it's kind of a great telling of it. You know, very poetic telling of yeah, I believe it was like the kingdom of Judah fought with Asher, or Assyria. And you know, legend has it that you know, as an angel of the Lord came and, yeah, kind of wiped out the enemy for them. Um, but I was kind of
And
reading it.
Sennacherib
Yeah,
was a king, is a king
yeah,
of
he's the
Assyria.
king,
Yeah,
right?
he's a
Yeah,
Syrian king.
and you know, there's all kinds of with Assyria and Sennacherib, and you know, he had the capital Nineveh, which is, you know, part of like one of my favorite stories, Jonah. But you know, Assyria. He also was the king of Babylon. So um, you know, they were just I don't think, yeah.
Yeah,
Initial
these are one of
thoughts.
the
It's just
Israelites'
interesting. You know,
enemy.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. You just, you know, it can kind of send you down a little bit of a rabbit hole of history, but I think very well told.
Right. The what I one thing that sticks out to me in this poem is the use of color. You know,
Mm,
the Assyrian came down like the wolf on the fold, and his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold.
yep.
Gold, like purple is color of
Right.
royalty,
Yep.
gold a royal color.
hmm
Basically, we're setting the scene. The Assyrian, they seem undefeatable.
hmm
They
Right.
seem indefatigable.
hmm
Um,
hmm
the sheen of their spears was like stars on the sea. So
Right.
there's a multitude of them when the
Yep.
blue wave rolls nightly on deep Galilee. So we
hmm
have purple and gold, this exalted purple and gold, but their spears are like stars on the sea, and the
hmm
blue wave rolls. So it's almost like these people are able to sort of run the gamut. Not only are they high up in purple and gold like the
hmm
sun, but
hmm
the amount of them, they seem to roll like the sea.
hmm
So
hmm
this is an all-encompassing force. This force
hmm
encompasses basically the entire cosmos, it seems. Because when we go to the next stanza, like the leaves of the forest when summer is green, that host with their banners at sunset were seen.
hmm
But like the leaves of the forest when autumn hath blown,
Yep.
that host on the morrow lay withered and strown. So
hmm
it's almost like this is a move that happens a lot, especially in the Old Testament. Those that seem big, exalted, mighty, all encompassing are
Right.
taken down. Great
Yep.
Pharaoh, the giant Goliath, and now
hmm
the same motif appears with the forces of Sennacherib.
Yep.
We have the angel of death wiping them out, and I love we still have this use of color, like those that were so colorful, they reigned in the purple and gold after the angel of death almost inverts everything, the same way summer inverts autumn and summer are like inverse of each other. the steed was now laying on the white turf, and his cold, the cold mucus from the death throes of the horse, and the rider of the horse lay distorted and pale, and with the lances unlifted, the trumpets unblown. So these individuals who seem so great and so fierce and so ferocious at the night, as they're getting ready in the morning to go and attack Judea. By the morning they're pale, they're without color, they've been sort of washed out, almost washed away.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's those first two stanzas are great because it's kind of a um good. We are using nature, um and because you kind of have the two couplets. Each one is broken up, kind of. Each stanza is kind of broken up into two couplets, right? Two rhyming couplets.
Right.
And so each couplet kind of gives us a different um analogy to nature, to sort of to view what this army is, right? Yeah, I mean, it's the wolf
Mm-hmm.
coming on the fold, right? Like, um it's the like the stars on the sea, we're
Mm,
talking, the Sea of Galilee, obviously that's the one that Israel and Judah were on, the shores of. The leaves of the forest, when it's green, and then the leaves of the forest when it's autumn. I mean, these are things in nature that we can all we all have associations with. Um, and so I think that's a great, no, it's just a great example of how, the influence of, to kind of show the influence of the Romantics. We have people who go deep into later on, in poetry. You have people who just focus on images. We have people who just focus on the nature aspect. People who just focus on, stories of kings and, armies fighting and, things like this. But, he kind of brings them all together. And we haven't mentioned the rhythm. I was going to kind of wait. I don't want to steal your thunder, but I just love the rhythm of it. And
it is a
yeah, I
great
mean,
rhythm. The
yeah.
old anapestic tetrameter.
Hmm. Hmm.
The da da dum da da dum. It's reminiscent of the horses. The horses that would have been galloping on Judea, but they were smote by the angel of the Lord. You know,
Hmm. Hmm. Right. Hmm.
so there
Right.
is
Yeah, because
that.
that's why the trumpet's unblown. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is that driving rhythm. And I mentioned another more, a later other, like Dr. Seuss will
Hmm.
use the Anapest to great effect,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But this is so the Anapest kind of takes on a kind of childish tone after Dr. Seuss,
Right.
but
Right.
there's were several examples of the Anapest being used more seriously in the
Hmm.
Romantic days,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
as we can see here, the
Right.
Judean
Right.
rhythm.
Yeah, yeah. Nothing about this is childish. People just learned about it as children, and now they need to kind of get over themselves, and realize that it's not, you just learned about it as children. It doesn't make it childish. But what I love about this too is that I think in some ways is kind of almost showing the Assyrians as against nature. you know
Mm,
they're kind of almost rising up against nature. They're like going against God, and they're kind of standing proud and mighty. And of course, how the mighty fall, because then at they're like they're facing down night. They're like the leaves of the forest when the summer is green. Plenty, multitude. um but then overnight, the angel of death spreads his wings on, over them. And they can't make it, they don't make it through the night, right? They,
Right.
the tents are all silent, the banners alone, the lance is unlifted, the trumpet unblown. They weren't defeated by military might. They were defeated simply by opposing the Lord.
Right. The universe almost defeated them.
Hmm. Yep.
There's almost some sort of, it's like a natural defeat.
Hmm.
And it's, and they're at first compared to they're exalted like the sun. They're
Hmm.
compared to summer, but
Hmm.
after that night, they're often compared. They're cold.
Hmm.
The eyes of the sleeper have waxed deadly and chill. Their
Hmm.
hearts have grown still.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
the foam of the dead horses is like the
Hmm.
cold spray of the rock beating surf.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
it's interesting because we have a little bit of an inversion at the end to where, and the might of the Gentile unsmote by the sword hath melted like snow in the glance of the Lord.
Hmm.
So the might of the Gentile has melted like snow, even though before the Gentiles were like the sun and then they're cold. The ending we have their resolve almost melting.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
you kind of have a bit of an inverse motif there, to where it seems like the Lord hath make them cold, but the Lord can also make their resolve melt.
Right.
So we almost have God reclaiming all
Hmm.
aspects of nature,
Yeah.
and sort of in his wiping out of the forces of
Hmm.
Sennacherib.
Yeah. I see it too as almost like, I think you can't stop the changing of the seasons. You can't
Mm,
stop,
right,
and that's where, to your point, yeah, like there's, like they're like the summer, they're high and mighty and proud. Eventually though, autumn comes, and so will winter, and then
right,
afterwards so will spring, right?
right,
And there's really nothing you can do about it. You can try as your, try your darndest. um I believe also in Isaiah and Nahum, they, sort of, prophesy the end of, Babylon, the end of Assyria,
mm,
and, is kind of seeing their rise and fall as, like a little kind of, mysterious in a way, because it just
mm-hmm,
suddenly fell. I mean, now
right,
you look at it, it's, Iraq is a desert.
right,
We're talking about, the fall of Greece earlier. Um, you know, just like, hey, with Shelley, you did Ozymandias.
right,
Um, Assyria is, you could say that, Sennacherib is, he's kind of an Ozymandias character here.
right, right. And that's something about the romantics. They're reaching back.
Hmm.
They're reaching back. They're reaching down through history back,
Hmm.
to find that self that is sort of untarnished by the industrialization, by the urbanization. And and even though that self may die in battle, there's something exaltative. There's something grand about that self. That was almost like a true self, because once we get into, obviously once we get past World War II, dying in battle, like you're just dying for some government. There's no glory in that. There's no, nothing in
Yeah.
that.
After World War II, yeah, certainly, absolutely. Yep.
But not to, but to to kind of keep everything in line. The point of this poem is the Assyrians. They were on the verge of a great heroic victory, but the forces of nature, the universe, God, stopped them. They didn't even
Hmm.
blow the trumpets. They didn't even wave the banners. They didn't even lift the lances. You
Hmm.
know, so their romantic moment was cut short, by an angel of the Lord. However, all the motifs of romanticism are still present in this poem. So
Right.
we get kind of another good inversion there by Lord Byron. Just the juxtaposition, the inversions, the great moves. This is, fantastic poem.
Yep. Yeah. No, I find it's enjoyable to read, and you can dig into it, and I
Right,
think all great poetry should be that way.
right, right. So That was the destruction of Sennacherib, and that was one of one of the ones that kind of put Byron on the map. There was actually like a lot of sports teams took on the color of purple and gold after this poem came out, and
Hmm,
like I think the Australian team defeated the English team in cricket, and they were saying things like, the Australians came down like the wolf on the fold, and
interesting.
so it's kind of a fun poem. I know it seems a bit, I mean, it might seem a bit heavy, but people kind of recite this is in kind of a fun way. There's something kind of fun, exciting about it, almost like a bit of a adventure novel or something like that.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
Assyrians came down like the wolf on the fold, and
Yeah.
his cohorts were gleaming in purple and gold. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Also, one quick point too is just interesting. We are talking about his sort of sordid life, personal life, and then yet you would say like, oh well, but then he writes a poem that is, sort of
mm,
exalting, maybe Christianity, right? And I think our contemporary minds, we have a hard time holding those two things together.
right, right. And Byron, he had an appreciation for Christianity, as in a specific denomination of Christianity. I want to say Calvinism,
Hmm.
but
I'm not sure. I don't
don't
know.
quote me on that. Don't quote me
Yeah.
on that. But one of his nurses was very much into the church that he had when he was a child, and it instilled in him a life, like a love of these stories,
Mm, mm-hmm.
Bible stories. So,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
I think she was Calvinist, and don't quote me on that, but yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, this sordid aristocrat writes a poem, exalting a Bible story.
Yeah. I wonder if she was the same nurse he lost his virginity to. When he was literally he like when he was like 10 or 11 years old.
Oh, I think he was a bit younger with this nurse that I was
Oh,
talking
okay.
about. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, but
Yeah.
that is also a
It's
bit
kind
true.
of
This guy
hey,
Byron.
I
This is one
mean,
of those
look,
guys. This is a guy. This is one of those
right.
guys, man.
Now
What can we
the
say?
now if you want to understand oh gosh, of course Mick Jagger, so some of these other, kind of British rock stars and like dig into Lord Byron, you might kind of get what they're going for. All right. So this oh yeah, hey, nice to, see put a face to a name here.
Oh yeah, this is a real pretty boy.
Yep, right.
We got him
Um
there.
and so to Inez, and this is in Child Harold's Pilgrimage. It's in the first canto, and it's kind of like an aside. But it's kind of, it sort of supplements the overall narrative. So to Inez, nay, smile not at my sullen brow. Alas, I cannot smile again. Yet heaven avert that ever thou shouldst weep, and haply weep in vain. And dost thou ask what secret woe I bear, corroding joy and youth? And wilt thou vainly seek to know a pang, even thou must fail to soothe? It is not love, it is not hate, nor low ambition's honours lost, that bids me loathe my present state, and fly from all I prize the most. It is that weariness which springs from all I meet, or hear, or see. To me no pleasure beauty brings. Thine eyes have scarce a charm for me. It is that settled, ceaseless gloom that a fabled Hebrew wanderer bore, that will not look beyond the tomb, but cannot hope for rest before. What exile from himself can flee? To zones, though more and more remote, still pursues, where'er I be, the blight of life, the demon thought. Yet others wrapped in pleasure seem, and taste of all that I forsake. Oh, may they still of transport dream, and ne'er, at least like me, awake. Through many a clime 'tis mine to go, with many a retrospection cursed, and all my solace is to know, whate'er betides, I've known the worst. What is that worst? Nay, do not ask, in pity from the search forbear. Smile on, nor venture to unmask man's heart, and view the hell that's there. So you got some opening thoughts on
Man,
two Inez?
this is this is that romantic introspection.
Mm-hmm.
This is the lens turned inward.
Mm-hmm.
The soul is the wounded soul, the hurt, the brooding, that we get from that Byronic hero.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just these last two stanzas. And all my solace is to know whatever betides, I've known the worst. He's known the worst. What is that worst? Nay, do not ask. In
Mm-hmm.
pity from the search for
Right.
there, swell on, no, nor venture to unmask man's heart and view the hell that's there. There in romantic poetry, I think I've seen stuff like this in maybe Thoreau, but it's almost like this. Don't ask. Don't ask me about my torment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
Don't
reminds me of
ask.
Poe.
Yeah, both for sure. Like, don't ask. Even though I have gone on and on, stanza and
Mm-hmm.
stanza about how
Mm-hmm.
tormented I am, don't
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
ask. You
Right.
couldn't.
Yeah.
You couldn't
Yeah. You
bear.
don't want this.
Yeah,
Right.
you couldn't bear how this torment.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I'm a rich globe-trotting aristocrat, I still
Mm-hmm.
feel.
Right, yeah. Yeah, because yeah, no more nothing mortal could ever be worse than, it doesn't matter what goes on in the world. I know the worst thing that can ever happen, you know. I know
Mm,
the worst of it, the lowest lows, and the lowest
mm.
lows exist in man's heart. And just like that, that demon thought that travels. But yeah,
And
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I do like that verse. The demon thought.
Mhm.
Thought as a demon makes me think of the paralysis of analysis.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and the romantics wanted action. You know,
Mhm.
thought, sitting, thinking. Thought sounds like sitting in a factory or something, or
Mhm.
you know, maybe being oppressed by some of these, like these these stale these stale places, these things that are kind of these sort of big overblown things. They're not out there in the truth. The truth would be something like nature or adventure, or throwing reason to the wind, and embracing a lover or something like that. Actions over thought.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's kind of how I see thought
Right,
demonized.
right, right. Yeah. It's and he also says and the interesting thing is that through Child Harold's pilgrimage, he's kind of he's going to these faraway places. He has left his home behind, and of course this is Byron tried to distance himself from this character, but it very much was kind of autobi- autobiographical. But he's Child Harold is someone who's he's known all the pleasures of man, and he's grown sort of dissatisfied with them, and so he leaves home in order to experience something else. I guess at the very least, just to because he's just and he's kind of explaining his sort of motivations here. Um, something that's interesting too is that to Inez is also like the English name Agnes goes back to a
Mm,
Greek word. This is like the Spanish or Portuguese spelling. So that's the first place that he goes to after he leaves Britain is to Spanish or to Spain and Portugal. And it's a female name. Also with comes from Greek origins of like Agnes or Agnos,
mm,
meaning like chaste or pure.
okay.
So he's like speaking to like a chaste or pure woman,
Mm,
almost like a like an idealized version of this woman. And he met many Spanish or Portuguese women who were I think he says like well versed in the witching arts of love, you know
mm,
um and so like he's directing this to to Inez, this pure Spanish or Portuguese woman, right? And saying, this woman who's I guess who's trying to maybe sees that he has this sullen, nay, smile not at my sullen brow. Alas, I cannot smile again. You know, like he's down and out. This night, you see this like maybe pure woman who's like, he's like, don't try and make me feel better. You know,
Right.
Yet heaven avert that ever thou shouldst weep, and haply weep in vain. He's saying like, if you're gonna cry for me, you're crying in vain. You're crying for yourself. There's no sense in crying for me. Because and do you really ask what secret woe I bear? Because I'm not sharing what's wrong with me. Corroding joy and youth. Because we've seen people who are unhappy that you're like, oh, you should smile. It's
Mm-hmm.
you'd be prettier if you smiled. Maybe that's what the Spanish girl is saying to him. um Wilt thou vainly, he's saying, it's kind of, it's vain on your part. Wilt thou vainly seek to know a pain, though even thou must fail to soothe? Like, you can't help me. He's just telling her, like, search in vain for what is the pain that's, in my heart, but you can't, soothe me. It is not love. It is not hate. It's not low ambitions, honors lost, that bids me to loathe my present state. He's saying like, I didn't leave home, because I love, for love of something else, or for hating home, or because I lost honor and now I must go out and get it. That's not what drives me.
Right.
Um, it's that weariness which springs from all I meet or hear or see. This is kind of the disillusioned, you know, sort of, kind of romantic, Byronic hero, right? He's
Right.
looking out on beauty, and no pleasure beauty brings. Thine eyes have scarce a charm for me. So like he's saying like, hey, you're a beautiful girl, but it just doesn't do anything for me right now. Nothing can. Nothing can cure this lonely heart.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a
Uh,
sentiment that's,
mhm,
it's almost in art and music.
mhm,
It's
mhm.
there's always that
Right.
by I never really realized how effervescent that Byronic hero
Yeah.
is.
Mhm,
There's
mhm.
echoes of it, like we said, in Bruce Wayne. There's echoes
Mhm.
of it in Jack Skeleton.
Westerns.
Yeah, exactly.
Y-
You know, even like sailors or captains
Mhm,
of ships and all that
mhm.
type of stuff.
Right.
Anyone
Yep.
who's like brooding when they
Mhm,
seem to have it
mhm,
all.
mhm, mhm. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And then he goes on to kind of say, to describe like what it is. It is that settled, ceaseless gloom the fabled Hebrew wanderer bore, that will not look beyond the tomb, but cannot help hope for rest before. Um, and I want to make a point. I think that this stanza, I love this stanza. It's poetic, but I find it anti-Semitic because the Hebrew wanderer, it's like he's saying the state of Israel doesn't have a right to exist. If only he knew. But
Mhm.
how, anyways, that's a anyways, but there's that idea of the wandering Hebrew, like they have no home, right?
Right.
um and it also reminds me that the second half of this stanza, that will not look beyond the tomb but cannot hope for rest before, reminds me of this. It's one of my favorites, I say it all the time, but it's a Sufi saying, quit this life, quit the next life, and quit quitting.
Mhm.
So he's wandering, he has no home, he won't look beyond the tomb, there's nothing next. And he's not hoping for rest now.
Right.
I find that, I just find that beautiful, a beautiful characterization.
Yeah.
um yeah, you got something.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, that is a great characterization. I like the device of using an extremely beautiful sort of pure woman as your litmus test for your despair.
Mm,
Not even this. I got this lovely woman sitting here
right.
fawning over me, asking me
Mm-hmm.
about how I feel and my feelings and my
Right.
emotions, but she
Uh-huh.
doesn't. She doesn't really get it. She could
No.
never understand
Nope. Nope.
like how deep,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
obviously, like a lot of guys, some beautiful woman even speaks to them that could lift their countenance.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Not Byron.
Hey,
It's gonna
no,
take
no,
more than a
not this
pretty
guy.
face to make me smile.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you can't cure this pain. Don't in vain seek. Um, and in my because I have the collected well selected poems.
Okay.
Um, in the sixth stanza, what exile is capitalized in mine. And
Okay.
so I kind of like how that's used as the pronoun because he's saying what exile. Um, referring to like the person, the exile, what exile from himself can flee. That's that's kind of that's his issue. I can't get away from myself. To
Right.
zones through more and more remote, still pursues where'er I be, the blight of life, the demon thought. You know, no matter where I go, no matter what I do, I'm always there, and that's my problem. you
It's
know
my brooding, my
Yes,
thinking.
yeah, right, yeah,
You know.
exactly. It's all this troubled mind, the this yeah, these deep thoughts that I find myself in.
We know
There's that
guys like
yeah,
this, but they don't have
right,
enough
right,
money to pull it off.
right. I love the movie, but after it came out, oh, what was it? Oh, that has oh gosh, I'm forgetting what it was. It's just a couple maybe a year or two ago. It was like all over Twitter, X, whatever, where he's like, you can't understand my troubled mind. Everyone was killing this movie. I forget the name of it. It doesn't matter.
Mm,
But that's what it's kind of funny. So,
right.
the demon thought. Um, you know, eh, but he says, however, yet others wrapped in pleasure seem. Look, I can see that other people are happy. I'm not saying that they're not. Look,
Hmm.
and the taste of all that I forsake, I've had it. It's not for me. Look, they seem to be happy with it, and that's okay with me. He says, "Oh, may they still of transport dream. I wish that they do. I hope that they still dream that this can take them to wherever they want to go. It's not taking me anywhere though, and never at least like me awake. And I what I appreciate about that is you know, maybe I have at one time felt a bit like Byron. And instead of saying, you know, I want all these people to remain happy in their illusions, I was one who was maybe the opposite and was like, no, I gotta wake everybody up. And maybe that was
Mm.
my immaturity. But
Well,
yeah,
the romantics are all about themselves. So,
yeah,
the
hmm,
romantics, they give a damn how everybody else
that is
feels. You
true.
know what I mean?
Right, yeah. Through many a climb 'tis mine to go, with many a retrospection cursed, right? Again, that retrospection is cursed, those deep thoughts, and all my solace is to know and you've said this already, whatever betides, I've known the worst. Whatever happens, I've known the worst of it. What is that worst? Nay, do not ask. In pity from the search forbear. Don't try and come. You don't want to walk down this road. You don't want these problems. Stay where you're at. You're stupid.
I
You're
love how
happy.
he never mentions what they are though.
It does no. I
But they're
mean, just
plaguing
because
him,
you
and
don't
they're
want to,
right.
right? To give you
Well,
this was to
he
give you a
does mention
curse,
it is his own thoughts. Even it is
right?
his own thoughts, but he
Mm-hmm.
does not detail those thoughts
Mm-mm.
to
Mm-mm.
us.
No, no, because it's a cursed retrospection. I
So
mean,
this is the
yeah.
brooding. This is
Mm-hmm.
the,
Mm-hmm.
this is the, I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
The brooding.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he says, smile on. Stay happy. Stay in your place. Smile on. Nor
Right.
venture to unmask man's heart. Don't try and you don't want to. You know. It's almost like he's like patting her on the head, like you don't want to. You don't want to
He's
travel
almost
down
like,
this road.
listen, you're from this Spanish place, this
Mm-hmm.
place of
Mm-hmm.
where they have some sort of real, I don't know, some sort of real history or real culture, or you're a person of reality almost. Me from my, from England, cold
Mm-hmm.
urbanized
Mm-hmm.
England, you'll
Mm-hmm.
never
Mm-hmm.
know my despair. You
Mm-hmm.
won't be able to match it. You won't be able
Mm-hmm.
to figure it out because
Mm-hmm.
you know um
Right. All you're gonna see is a hell.
right, right.
And and there's no need for you to do that. It's actually it's better for you if you just remain happy. Um,
Can we read this as almost like a recapitulation of elitism? Like he's not being elite as far as his money or his class, but he's sort of elite of his ideas,
emotion.
maybe his thinking, his emotions. Like
Mhm.
he's an
Mhm.
emotional elitist. Like
Right.
because I mean, like the pretty girls of Spain and Portugal, you can never understand my, my feelings. Yet I'm sure pretty girls have dark days too. Pretty
Yeah.
Spanish and
Mhm.
Portuguese women.
Yeah. No, it may be it may be something that where he's it is this sort of elitism that the retrospection, right? Like you who are pure, who are of the earth, who are maybe the working poor, who have all these material pleasures. There's no need for you to when you have time to think, like I do, someone of the aristocracy who's educated. I have time to think.
Right,
This is not, you do not want this. It is better
right.
for you to remain as you are, toiling with the earth, and maybe having your
Just
material
go
pleasures
dance and
afterwards.
run and be happy.
Right. Yep. 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 Because for me, those things do nothing. They do not bring me pleasure anymore.
All the
Um,
traveling I done is more like a
mhm.
chore through many a climb
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
I've been through.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Not even just land, but climb. I've been to different climes, different
Right.
climates. Different parts of the world.
And it's all been for naught. So it's all
Right.
been for, it hasn't lifted my countenance.
Mm-mm, none.
Was that something set beguiling my sad countenance into smiling?
That does
There's no
sound.
there's no
Yeah.
beguiling the sad countenance of Lord Byron into
Uh huh.
smiling.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So.
Or
Yeah.
my
No.
sad
Yep.
fancy. Oh,
Mhm.
that's from the Raven.
Oh, okay. That's why I was
Beguiling
like,
my sad
why does that
fancy
sound?
into
Yes.
smiling.
Mhm. Mhm.
You can't beguile Lord Byron's sad fancy into smiling.
No. No. And so I think that this poem, like I said, it's kind of a little, it's almost like an insert in the narrative of um, Child Harold's pilgrimage. I feel like this one sort of almost encapsulates the feeling of it. And I haven't read all of Byron, but I feel like this poem sort of, it captures that Byronic hero, that romance,
Right,
everything we've been saying this whole time.
right.
um yeah, so
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
that's why I enjoy
yeah.
this one.
No, I like this one too. And like I said, what a device, what a literary device, using a pretty woman to
Yeah.
illustrate your
Yeah.
how brooding you are. That was
Hmm. Hmm.
fantastic.
Right, right, because
That's fantastic.
yeah, I mean, like a pure woman, maybe she's like a nun or something, right?
Right,
Because Spain is still very much Catholic. Well, and kind of they've gone through this period where they've um they have like this sort of Catholic renaissance in Spain to sort of drive out the Moors. And so like you'd almost think like you're speaking to this pure woman, and you have an unpure heart, and maybe you've lived a life of excess beforehand. Other you may One would think you might be more apologetic or hoping for some sort of, like, maybe
redemption.
she, yeah, through her, right? Like, you of pure heart, like maybe you can absolve this pain that I have. But he says like,
Mm.
no, you cannot. Like, you cannot. There's nothing you can do.
It's odd, but that's almost kind of like, maybe you guys have seen, this is a bit contemporary, but that's almost like, BoJack Horseman. I don't know if people have watched that
Mm,
show, but
mm, mm.
he's
I've never
almost
seen all of it, but yeah.
he almost tries to get other people to make him feel better. Like
Hmm.
he
Hmm.
likes it when other people are paying attention to him and trying to make him feel better. That's one
Mm,
way that he
mm.
feels better about himself. Lord
Yeah.
Byron's the
Yeah.
opposite. Lord Byron likes it when people can't relate to him.
Yeah, yeah. What's funny is, though, his life is almost the opposite, where he puts this thing out where
Hmm.
he's saying that, and then yet people flock to him.
Right.
And
Whether like
yeah.
literally flock to him, where other creatives want to be around him, or that he's the center of their attention. He's
Mhm,
thousands of miles away in the Mediterranean, yet the subject of gossip back in England.
mhm. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, hey, dude, Lord Byron. I mean, if you haven't gotten into him, I think that he's there's so much of him that feels contemporary or like one can relate to. Um, even he would be like a TikTok star, like a so he could have been this first social media kind of star or something like that, and that's kind of what he was for his day.
Yeah, social media, or even TV, anything, any sort
Mhm.
of
Celebrity.
anything. Right,
Yeah.
right. He almost sometimes even reminds me of Hunter S. Thompson, the way he's like
Hmm.
writing, and like his writings are becoming popular, and he's almost like living. You can't. Is he a reliable narrator?
Right.
You assume he exaggerates some
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
kind of crafts stories here. So
Right.
there's a lot of contemporary and more modern, capitulations of Lord Byron.
Right. And I think you just have to kind of get beyond. I think one barrier for folks, for people, and I could be wrong, would just be sort of getting beyond, like we talked about with your poem, The Destruction of Sennacherib. Um, where you go like, oh, well, it just feels like nursery rhyme or like kind of childish or something like
Hmm.
that. Um, yeah, I think that is like a stumbling block for people of our age and in our time.
I think so too, and especially with the Anapest, you know what I mean.
Hmm. Hmm.
But um, I think
Digging.
that is
Yeah.
one thing, and also maybe the length of some of this romantic
A lot of his
poetry.
stuff, yeah, is longer. Yeah, absolutely.
Take your time. I would say take your time, take it
Hmm.
line by line,
Hmm.
take it word by word.
Hmm.
I think it's worth the effort.
Right.
I think it's worth the effort. I think there's something the romantics can teach us about our time
Hmm.
and the time that we live in today.
Yep.
You know, urbanization,
Yep.
industrialization
Yep.
versus digitalization, everything
Hmm.
going on the internet.
Rise of AI.
Can we escape the internet? Can we escape AI? Can we escape the digital world? Can they escape the romantics want to know, can they escape the urban world? Can they escape the industrial world?
Right.
The world's been reshaped
Right.
over the
Yeah.
last 15, 20
Hmm.
years. The
Hmm.
world's been reshaped. Do we fit in? Is there something of the past that we can dig down and find meaning in today?
Hmm. Hmm.
These are we ask ourselves similar questions to
Right.
what the romantics were asking themselves. So, hey,
Yeah. Well, hey, I think that sums it up. I think with that, I mean, this has been Verse Take.
right? Hey,
Um, our next one, I want to pull up real quick who we're gonna be doing next. It is going to be T.S. Eliot, and that will actually be the last
ooh,
episode of season 2.
only 5
So
episodes for season 2.
6. I
This
misspoke and said earlier was 4. So we've season 2 we've done Billy Collins,
okay.
Charles Bukowski, Mary Oliver, Percy Bysshe Shelley, Lord Byron,
Now
T.S. Eliot,
finishing with T.S.
Thomas
Eliot,
Stearns Eliot.
the modernist,
Yeah, kind
the
of bring
wasteland.
right. Yeah. Also
By
someone
by
who,
the
yeah.
by the time we get to modernism, we know that
Hmm.
okay, the Enlightenment
Yeah,
went
yeah.
wrong. Something
Right.
went
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah, yeah, right. Um, and we're not necessarily going in any sort of it's just, that's just the way that it's kind of worked out, the way that we've structured this. But we're not, here we're not necessarily going in any kind of order per se.
Mm-mm.
But yeah, T.S. Eliot, I'm looking
We're
forward
just
to
so
it.
happening to finish up with T.S. Eliot.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So, well, hey, thanks for watching. Uh subscribe, like it, share it, give it to a friend. Tell them about James, tell them about me, Justin. Either way.
We're guys. We like poetry,
And that's it. Okay, and we're
and that's
sticking
it,
to
man.
it. That's our
All right.
story.
But see you guys next time.
Signing
Verse
out.
Take signing off.